So, if you're leading a medical practice, you've just been through it. 43 days of some serious uncertainty. Well, the government shutdown is over, but believe me, the work is just getting started. We're going to break down exactly what the next 60 days mean for your operations, your revenue, and your team. Let's dive in.
43 days. That's how long we were all dealing with operational paralysis, with billing confusion. For 43 days, critical telehealth waivers and payment protections were just gone.
But the good news is, those days are officially over. The government is funded again. But this is absolutely no time to relax. This relief, it's temporary, and the clock is already ticking. It is time to shift from just reacting to taking action.
Okay, so here's our game plan for this briefing. First, what exactly is this temporary fix? Second, which of your programs are back online? Third, and this is the most important part, what is your immediate action plan? And finally, we'll talk about this new funding cliff on the horizon and what other issues you need to keep your eye on.
So what we're dealing with here is something called a continuing resolution, or CR. It was signed back on November 12th. Now, this is not a permanent solution, not by a long shot. Think of it as a temporary patch. It funds the government, and this is key, it restores those healthcare programs retroactively to October 1st, but only until January 30th.
All right, let's get into the nitty-gritty of what this CR actually does for your practice, day to day. We're talking about the real-world impact on telehealth, on your payments, and on those support programs that help your patients. This is the real so what for your bottom line.
And what's been restored here is, well, it's pretty significant. The big one is that all those pandemic-era telehealth flexibilities are back, and they're retroactive to October 1st. This is huge. It means patients can get care from home again, no matter where they live. Your OTs, PTs, and speech therapists can bill Medicare. And get this, audio-only visits, which are an absolute lifeline for so many patients, are covered. Plus, the hospital-at-home waiver is extended too.
Now, beyond telehealth, this CR is a critical shield for your revenue. And I want you to focus on this number, 4%. This represents a really significant cut to your Medicare payments that you just avoided.
Let's actually break down the dollars and cents here. Without this CR, a rule called PAYGO would have kicked in, triggering an extra 4% sequestration cut on January 1st. That's on top of the 2% we already have. So look at the table. For a single doctor billing $400,000 to Medicare, that's a $16,000 loss you just dodged. For a 10-physician practice, that's $160,000 in saved revenue. This thing directly protects your bottom line.
Another big win in this CR is the restoration of something called the GPCI floor. This is vital, especially if your practice is in a rural or underserved area. Basically, it stops Medicare from cutting your payments just because you operate in a region that's considered lower cost. It really helps level the playing field and makes it easier to recruit and keep your staff.
And finally, a few key safety net programs got their funding extended. Now, this isn't cash directly in your pocket, but it stabilizes the entire ecosystem you work in. It means your community health partners can keep taking care of your uninsured patients, and those programs that help you recruit new talent stay funded.
All right, so that's the what. We know what's changed. Now for the really crucial part. What do you do now? This section is your immediate rubber-meets-the-road action plan to protect your revenue and make sure you're compliant in this new temporary landscape.
First things first. Retroactive claims. For those 43 days, telehealth claims were basically in limbo. Your number one priority this week is to get on the phone with your Medicare Administrative Contractor, your MAC. Find out their timeline. Ask them, do we need to resubmit, or are you going to handle it? And critically, your revenue cycle team needs a spreadsheet to track every single one of those claims until that payment is in your bank account. With all these rules snapping back into place retroactively, this is the perfect moment for a quick compliance audit. Are you positive you're documenting the patient's location correctly? Are your place of service codes right? Even a small error now could lead to some painful takebacks later. And hey, make sure your clinical teams know that the in-person visit rule for behavioral health telehealth is delayed, but it's not gone for good. Okay, so we've put out the immediate fire. But, and this is a big but, we have to look ahead. This temporary fix expires on January 30th, and that creates what we're calling the next funding cliff. Everything we just talked about, all those protections, could just vanish overnight.
Just look at this timeline. The ink is barely dry on this CR, but notice that other date, December 31st.
That's when the enhanced ACA tax credits are set to expire, which could really hurt your patient's ability to afford insurance. And then, just 30 days later, the whole CR runs out. This stability we have right now is incredibly fragile.
So, this is the question you need to be asking in your next leadership meeting. You need to start scenario planning now. What does your operation look like if these telehealth waivers disappear again? How will you handle scheduling? Which patients are going to be hit the hardest? Don't wait until the middle of January to start having this conversation.
And to make that planning really sharp, you gotta know what wasn't in this bill. So let's quickly touch on the major healthcare policies that were left on the table. These are gonna impact your practice in the coming months.
Keep 3 big things on your radar. First, those ACA tax credits that expire on New Year's Eve. If Congress doesn't extend them, you could see a real spike in your uninsured patient volume. Second, telehealth's future is still just temporary, and that makes it almost impossible to do any real long-term planning. And finally, if you run a lab, some very deep payment cuts are still on the books for the near future.
So here's the thought I want to leave you with. This whole cycle of short-term patches and last-minute funding cliffs, it's exhausting. It creates chaos for your practice and for your patients. The immediate work, yeah, it's tactical. You got to chase down those claims and check your compliance. But the long-term work is strategic. And that really brings us to the ultimate question for every practice leader out there. Are you going to keep adapting to these temporary fixes, or are you going to start advocating for permanent solutions that create real, lasting stability?